Story 1. I didn't put in enough effort in life or in the relationship. When I started to put in more effort, she had already given up and decided that no matter what I did, we were done. It had been 11 years. Story 2. She served me divorce papers. I'm an alcoholic, so I don't blame her for leaving, and I don't hold any negative feelings towards her. I have been almost sober for 2 years. Alcoholics Anonymous saved my life. It's really good now, and I feel at peace. I hope everyone is doing well. Story 3. He left me for a woman he had a short affair with for 2 months. 8 years down the drain. He actually moved in with her the same day he broke up with me. Story 4. My wife died from Mycobacterium avium complex. Typically, this infection is observed in the lungs of immunocompromised patients. In her case, it was located in her brain. According to my research, there have been fewer than 10 known cases in the United States, based on information from the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, where she passed away. Story 5. A third person got involved and caused a lot of miscommunication between us, which led to my ex emotionally cheating on me. Story 6. He died. The strange not having broken up with someone. During the first few years, I had him on a pedestal as I remembered all the good times. Now, 5 years later, I am recalling the less favorable things. These experiences will help better define my boundaries in my next relationship. He was my first boyfriend and my first real experience dealing with a man romantically. Sometimes it feels weird having not chosen to walk away or end it. Story 7. I was too immature and not ready for a long-term commitment. 3 years later, I met my now girlfriend, and we have been together for 12 years. This wouldn't have happened if I hadn't matured as a person. Story 8. Drug addiction has been the primary cause of many relationships ending in my life. In every relationship, my addiction took precedence. Story 9. He asked if he could hit me during intimacy. I said that light tapping was fine if he really wanted to. During intimacy, he struck me lightly, and it was acceptable. He then got a crazed look in his eyes before hitting me so hard that I lost hearing in my right ear for a couple of days. I later discovered how violent his actual fantasies were, much more violent than hitting. It was as if once he got one good hit in, the floodgates opened, and he couldn't stop expressing all the horrible things he wanted to do. It was terrifying, things I can't discuss on social media. I haven't dated since because that experience was so disturbing. My ear's better now, though. I didn't go to the doctor because I was afraid of being questioned by the authorities. I had agreed to being hit, so I didn't want to face judgment about that. But thankfully it healed on its own. Story 10. I was a horrible alcoholic and had no control over my actions at the time. However, I am now 5 months sober and working to become a better person. Story 11. He decided he wanted to try using meth behind a grocery store. Then he had relations with his ex. I will never view groceries the same way again. Story 12. Cheating. They denied it, but when 5 of my friends, whom I have known much longer and who have no reason to lie to me, told me they saw her with someone else multiple times, I tended to believe them. She kept denying it, and I could tell she was trying to force herself to cry, but it came off as pathetic. I told her I never wanted to see her again, and I never did. Not long after that, I met the woman I eventually married and have been with ever since. Story 13. He spent $700 at a strip club. When questioned about the amount, he admitted receiving oral sex from 2 strippers in the back room. Story 14. Long distance, my low income, and the sanctions on her country, which is Russia. Story 15. Too many red flags for me to deal with any longer. We were together for 3 years, but honestly, I regret starting it in the first place and not ending it after a few months. Reasons included, but are not limited to, she loved drama. She needed drama. She didn't like calm. She wanted a storm. She didn't want peace. She actively sought conflict. Why? Because no arguments mean we don't care enough about each other, which is nonsense. To her, sex equated to love. If I didn't want sex, it was a direct sign to her that I didn't love her. It didn't matter if she was home alone and I had worked 9 hours that day, traveled for 2, done the groceries, cooking, and even the laundry, and was exhausted. It was either sex or it meant no love, which in turn became conflict. She was irresponsible with money. If she had $10 on her and needed to pay back someone, she would pay them back and immediately spend the remaining money. She couldn't save a single cent. Oh, but don't worry, I had a stable income, so I could take her out to dinner, trips, buy clothing, get her gifts, and so on. One of the worst issues was that she was dishonest about money. She had someone handle her finances so she wouldn't get into debt again. Frequently, if I had to get her something like parking money or other agreed expenses, I had to chase after my money and talk to her financial advisor, who, ironically, was never informed. She did the same with her mother. Finally, she just didn't do anything when she moved in with me. No dishes, no laundry, no cooking, no cleaning. She would leave empty bags and items everywhere. I called her out on this numerous times, and it was always, "Why are you mad? It's just a bag." Admittedly, and to her credit, after the relationship ended, she fully admitted she contributed maybe 10% to the relationship stability, and nothing more. We still remain decent friends, but even a friends with benefits situation isn't happening anymore. Just seeing her reminded me of how much I didn't feel like a person or boyfriend, but just a walking servant or wallet. Feeling alone when you're together in the same room is a terrible feeling. Story 16. Death. Unfortunately, my boyfriend passed away from septicemia and end-stage liver disease on August 25, 2023. Story 17. He hit me. I left. I wasn't going to put up with that. I know the statistics. I wasn't going to be one of them. And, Lord have mercy on his soul if my family ever gets a hold of him, because they certainly won't. Story 18. She gave me gonorrhea, which implies she cheated and was not careful. She continued to lie even when confronted with lab results. This happened just yesterday. I am on my second day of treatment. 5 more days and I hope to be completely rid of this. Story 19. We had both fallen in love with a fantasy of who the other was rather than reality. Inevitably, that could only last for so long until alienation and disillusionment set in. Story 20. She told me I couldn't succeed anywhere except my hometown. That was a sensitive subject, and I decided I didn't need that negativity in my life. Story 21. I discovered he was having an affair with his intern when her appearance was shown on our TV screen during a screen sharing session. What an absolute idiot. Story 22. She was very clingy and jealous of the time I spent at work. I would get home after work to find 40 texts and a dozen missed calls. It was overwhelming. I am married now. My wife is rational and has good boundaries and life skills. Story 23. The classic, he cheated. How I found out was the real kicker. He had been seeing a girl named Elizabeth who was also in a relationship and engaged, in fact. Her fiancé discovered the infidelity, found my boyfriend on social media to confront him, and in doing so, found me listed as the girlfriend. He messaged me explaining what he had discovered. We had a brief call, and I was able to gather enough information to confirm the accuracy of my boyfriend's actions. I called him at work, and after he rambled about his day, I said 2 words, "Who is Elizabeth?" I wish I could have seen his face. Excuses followed, and I never spoke to or saw him again. We were together for about 10 months, and I'll never understand why someone doesn't just leave. Don't cheat. There was nothing to untangle. Just break up and move on. Story 24. She went from being excited to see me, asking about my day, and cuddling me to sleep after being intimate, to barely acknowledging my presence and playing a video game until 2 or 3 in the morning with men who flirted with her while I cried myself to sleep. Story 25. He was a man-child who didn't want to grow up, which made me fall out of love with him. Overall, he was a great guy, but he was too immature about certain things that I couldn't handle. I couldn't make him want to change. We are both happily married to other people now, and it all worked out for the best. Story 26. I frankly didn't love her. I jumped into something when I wasn't ready, and even though I was good to her for those 8 months, I simply wasted her time. Story 27. She kept saying she needed less of me in her life, and I kept giving it to her. After all, having her in my life was the best thing I had. Then she said she only wanted me to come over once a week and only for a little while. This stunned me, but I thought about it for a day or 2. I called her and said, "Sure, I agreed to only come over once a week and for a little while, even though it hurt to say. Then she told me, I didn't say you could come over anymore. So I called her a liar, and that was that. Story 28. My addiction to drugs was a significant factor, and we had marital problems before that secret came to light. Once it did, things escalated, and that really ended our relationship. In the end, I believe we are both happier now. I didn't want the marriage to end. I was committed for life, but I understand her decision and don't blame her. I wish she would have stayed through sickness and health, but I can't change the past. I can only move forward with positivity. I am now 10 months single and 10 months clean and sober. Story 29. He became acutely ill with psychotic mania, was hospitalized against his will, diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1, and then became an unmedicated mess that moved between psychiatric wards. Story 30. I knew I would see him on the news for murdering someone or multiple people one day, and I did not want to be his victim. Story 31. He was verbally abusive, constantly screaming at me and our 1-year-old child. He refused to get a job while I worked the night shift from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., coming home to care for our child during the day so he could sit on the couch and play games. I was barely eating and sleeping, getting maybe 4 to 5 hours of sleep a week and eating once every 2 to 3 days. I was also responsible for paying rent and bills, while he was more concerned about being with his 16-year-old girlfriend. He wouldn't even sleep in the bed with me. We're both in our 20s. That's just the gist of it. There's so much more that makes it even crazier. Story 32. He needed to work on himself and couldn't handle a relationship. This was after we were dating and after he told me he loved me. Story 33. I confronted her about driving under the influence, and after a few hours, she reacted with violence. Kicking, punching me in the face and stomach, and hitting me with a chair. In a display of disrespect, she urinated on me to assert her dominance. This occurred just hours after she had apologized for her previous acts of aggression. To this day, she holds me responsible for leaving. Story 34. He was constantly focused on his desires and paid little attention to my needs. He didn't communicate during conflicts and tried to make me feel guilty if I denied him intimacy. He was insecure about his size and often made self-deprecating comments, expecting me to reassure him by saying it was impressive. Honestly, it was exhausting. Story 35. He struggled to remain faithful during our marriage and tried to use force to make me stay. Story 36. I ended things because I put in much more effort to spend time with him than he did for me. I went 2 months without seeing him in person, even though he lived 20 minutes away. I'm certain he started developing feelings for someone else, but I have no evidence. Story 37. Cultural differences. We kept our relationship a secret, and his parents wanted him to be in an arranged marriage. Eventually, he could not avoid it, so we broke up. Story 38. My partner indicated he resented how much I was showering my dog with attention right after her cancer diagnosis. He knew she was dying and complained I was not attentive enough to his needs. Story 39. Later on, I found out that he was dying. The long-distance relationship made much more sense after he was gone. Story 40. He never checked out the things I recommended to him. After 4 years, he still hadn't read my favorite book, which I even bought a copy of for him, or watched a show I loved when I tried to share it with him. It made me feel like he didn't take me seriously or care about my opinions, which really affected my confidence. I always make a point to check out the things the people I love recommend to me, as it makes me feel appreciated and valued. Story 41. I went through his phone and discovered he was cheating on me by taking videos of me during intimacy without my knowledge. He also had all of his intimate videos with his ex still saved. Guess whose videos? Story 42. She got tired of me. I picked her up for a concert in Chicago. She said she was tired of me, but I had the tickets, so off we went. We were in the 5th row, right in the center. The band was rocking, and everyone was on their feet dancing. I looked down, and she was fast asleep in her seat. I thought, damn, she really is tired of me. Fortunately, I met my current wife a couple of weeks later. We have been married for 50 years this June. Story 43. He became overly obsessed with taking my virginity since we were seniors in high school and was constantly making sexual advances, including asking for inappropriate photos and comments. I couldn't be near him for even 10 minutes without him trying to get physical, even though we worked at the same place. This was the main issue, but I later discovered he was flirting and communicating with other girls while working late when I wasn't there. Story 44. His addiction to pornography, constantly making inappropriate comments about women's bodies in public, the way he made me feel about myself, constantly yelling at me and suddenly slapping my leg really hard in the car to see how I'd react. After I told him my dad used to turn around and slap my leg really hard when I made him mad because that's all he could reach while driving, refusing to use condoms and wanting me to continue the birth control that was wrecking my health because he read somewhere it makes your breasts bigger. He always talked about our intimate life with his friends, always tripping me while we were walking because it was funny. Copying those TikTok pranks where you scream at your girlfriend to see how she reacts or raise your fist to see if she'll flinch. His addiction to pornography again, scrolling through hours and hours of explicit content on every social media app you could think of, warping my self-image so badly I was considering cosmetic surgery, being dismissive and manipulative anytime I tried to have a conversation about how he made me feel, getting upset over small mistakes and accidents and making me feel extremely unsafe with no room for human error. The only time he ever complimented me was when I complained that he never called me pretty. That guy sucked. He made me miserable. I ended the relationship after realizing how much better I deserved. Now I'm with the love of my life. He is so gentle and kind and never yells at me. Once I spilled a drink all over his desk, where he has an expensive setup. He hugged me while I cried and reminded me that accidents happen. For the first time in my life, I actually feel beautiful, like I don't need to change my body. He's always calling me sweet names and complimenting me. He opens the car door for me and gets me flowers just because. He knows my taste perfectly, so I really feel seen through his gifts and gestures. He helps me shower and brush my teeth when my depression gets bad. He refills my weekly pill organizer and reminds me to take my medication. He cleans my room for me when I have no energy. My friends and family adore him. We've only been together for 6 months, but it feels way longer. I think we're going to be together forever. Don't settle for the wrong guys, people. Others tried to say that my ex's behavior is just how men are, and that my expectations were too high. They say I watch too many dramas and expect a prince. But I found my prince. They do exist. Don't settle. You deserve the best. Story 45. He went out for steak sauce and didn't come back for 3 days. I found out he was using cocaine with Colombians. I didn't know he was an addict. Goodbye. Story 46. I wanted to eat some mushrooms and go for a nature walk. Apparently, that means I'm a drug addict, even though I haven't used them in many years. A 10-year relationship is now over. Oh well, at least I've still got my mushrooms. Story 47. Sexuality assaulted his friend. I helped her go to the police, and then I ran away quickly, having no clue what happened to either of them. Story 48. She invited me for a Christmas dinner at her home, which is 2 hours away from the city, just to break up with me. I ended up stuck at her place for a couple of days because no buses were available during the holidays. I was hurt quite badly, and there was also emotional manipulation, physical abuse, and cheating. Story 49. I broke up with her because I didn't think it was fair for her to date a truck driver when I am gone 26 to 27 days out of the month. Story 50. He refused to watch a movie I wanted to see, despite us always watching whatever he prefers. You read that correctly. He is a 42-year-old man. Story 51. I received a Fulbright scholarship for my master's degree, and she said if I took it, she would leave me. Couldn't not take it. Story 52. He found his soulmate less than a year after we got married. He pursued a polyamorous relationship with her and her boyfriend and told me to go to therapy to fix myself so I would be okay with it. I said no. He told me to leave. I left. He begged me not to file for divorce so he could still get good college loans. I did it anyway. I haven't spoken to him since. Story 53. She was way too affectionate for me, and I told her several times to stop. I thought I could get used to it, but I couldn't continue. It was my fault for starting a relationship, knowing she was that way. Story 54. I gave up because I am afraid of commitment. Instead of remembering what I liked about her, I only focused on every little detail that I disagreed with. I have been doing that for the last 15 years. I am convinced that I am undeserving of love, so I sabotage all my relationships. Story 55. She would get furious over little things multiple times a week, and she never wanted to work on it. Over 7 years, instead of just giving the silent treatment and yelling, it turned into insults and ridicule. She said things that still stick with me. I'm not perfect, and I know specific ways I could have been much better, but I have never met someone so angry at those closest to them. Story 56. Among many topics, 80% of what she discussed was her disdain for men due to their tendency to abuse and take advantage of women. The remaining 20% focused on her self-confidence. Story 57. We were together for too long and shouldn't have gotten together in the first place. He cheated on me 4 times, and I resented him deeply. Eventually, I cheated on him and left. Story 58. We did not share the same goals for the future, and were not contributing to each other's personal growth. Story 59. He cheated on me with a man the day before my birthday and then forgot my birthday, so we had to redo it on Valentine's Day, which was disappointing. I discovered days after my birthday that they had been involved throughout our entire time back together. We were in a relationship for almost 5 years. 5 years of begging him to talk to me, listen to my feelings, and spend time together. I'm bisexual, and now my fear is that a man or woman will leave me for a standard I can never meet. He really affected me mentally. Story 60. She decided she could trade me in for a younger, more successful model as soon as we got married and moved to a new town. Then, she cheated on me with a life coach she hired, always exchanging intimacy for advancement. She was obsessed with status and superficial advantages. Story 61. Their insistent and unrelenting arrogance, instigation of psychological warfare, harassment, blackmail, and overall narcissism. Never again. Story 62. Both of us faced a year of mental health challenges. Adding a long-distance relationship, starting a business, and having to move along with family health issues contributed to the difficulties. I eventually burned out and couldn't sustain the relationship, despite the love we had. Story 63. We started the relationship as codependent, unaware of our individual traumas and emotionally and sexually repressed. After 5 years, I went to therapy due to some suicidal ideation, received the medication I needed, and began to learn about my dysfunction. I started healing and doing the work to change. My ex didn't like that I was stepping outside of the dynamic we had established. 5 more years proved that I was changing, while he was unwilling to change with me. The connection became toxic and abusive. I separated twice before finally filing for divorce. It's difficult. I still believe we could have made it work, but our marriage wasn't his priority. In fact, his own well-being wasn't his priority either. Story 64. I realized I was always looking for reasons not to see him, while he was looking for ways to take things further. I wasn't fully committed, so I stepped away completely. He was consistently in a relationship, and I felt that anyone could have gone on that first date with him, and it would have been the same. It seemed more desperate than a genuine appreciation for the other person. Unsurprisingly, he moved on quickly and appears to be happy. Story 65. The father of the child came back into the picture years later. I had to end the relationship because she clearly wanted him more than me. Story 66. I am reflecting on our relationship and recognizing the things I should not have tolerated. I was young and naive, and I accepted behavior that was unacceptable. He will always be my first love, but that does not come without criticism. I can still care for him as a person while acknowledging that, in many ways, he was a toxic individual. Story 67. This sums it up for me. They undermined my faith in my grasp of reality. Their actions did not match their words. They were experts at instilling guilt. They always claimed the role of the victim. It was too much, too soon. Felt like an emotional black hole. Story 68. We moved back to his hometown after living across the country together. His entire personality changed, and he became distant. A week after our move, I received a notification on my phone that he had created an account on a social media platform. I found it strange because he had been against me having an account on that platform while we were dating. He didn't even send me a friend request, and I don't think he ever intended to. I got suspicious and figured out his login information. It's important not to use the same password for all your accounts. He only had one conversation, and it was with a woman. His excuse was that he didn't know who she was and that she had messaged him first. This was 7 years ago. He has since married someone else, and I honestly feel bad for her for multiple reasons. Story 69. Looking back, I think it would have ended anyway because I didn't like him enough to keep dating him when I went back to college. It was a summer fling. At the time, I ended the relationship because he was too needy. When I went to work as a lifeguard each day, he would text me throughout my entire shift. If there were long gaps between my replies because I was on chair rotation, he would send passive-aggressive messages about me not caring enough to respond. When I got home from work, he wanted to hang out immediately. If I wanted some time to myself before spending time together, he would again accuse me of not caring enough. If I wanted to stay in and not see him because I had work early the next day, he would interrogate me. It was suffocating. I felt like I couldn't go about my day-to-day life without him buzzing around me like a fly. I ended up ending the relationship a few days before my birthday, and he took it quite well. He then messaged me on my birthday asking if I wanted my present, since it was not returnable and he had purchased it prior to our breakup. I didn't want to be mean, so I said yes. When I went to his house, he continued to be extremely needy and suffocating. He started asking if there was someone else and questioning me a lot. Story 70. I had a platonic relationship with my best friend, who was a narcissist. This made me feel confused and led to experiences of gaslighting and guilt trips. I eventually had to block and delete them from my life. Even discussing it makes me anxious. Story 71. It was a toxic relationship. Both of us were insecure, creating a difficult dynamic. It was a relief when our relationship ended, although it lasted too long. We hold on when we truly want something to work, even if we know deep down it won't. There was always that hope. However, things continued to deteriorate until I realized we would never reach happiness together, so I decided to end it. She still views me negatively now, even 10 years later, which is understandable. I was also negative about her for some time, but eventually reflected on the situation, my naivety, and her behavior as well as my own. I have forgiven both her and myself. Story 72. We were never official, just casually dating. We only shared one kiss. But we were very close and spent about a year going on adventures together. Despite that, I do consider him an ex. It just felt like we were best friends. Life was so much fun with him, but I never felt a deeper attraction towards him. So 6 months in, I told him I loved him as a friend. He said I might be confused but continued to pursue me. Nothing really changed until I felt he was crossing my boundaries, so I made it clear we were just friends and asked for space. He agreed but still kept pursuing me. The one thing keeping us connected was an upcoming fall trip to Europe with a group travel company. Once we got there, things got worse. He became jealous when I talked to other guys. He started rumors in the group about me being flirty, which wasn't true. I was just trying to make friends. He tried to kiss me on one occasion, tried to hold my hand a lot, and claimed I was his. 2 guys began bullying me, saying I dressed inappropriately and questioning what he even saw in me. They made the trip miserable and ruined what should have been a special experience. After the first week, I started distancing myself from him and tried to ignore the gossip. I was hurt that he was talking about me to others. It felt immature. When we got back home, I told him I loved him but didn't think he was going to handle only having a friendship. So I ended it. It's been 3 years. We've crossed paths a few times. He barely acknowledges me, extremely distant as if I were an acquaintance. I acknowledge him like an old friend, with love, because despite that terrible trip, I still cared. I still think of him often and the memories we shared. I wish we could have been good friends. It makes me sad every time I think about it. Story 73. On paper, she is the best woman I have ever dated. She is truly one of the best human beings I have ever met in my life. However, I just did not feel that way about her. I desperately wanted to be in love with her, but I simply wasn't. I cannot point to any specific reason. Story 74. He smoked marijuana and cigarettes daily in his apartment, and the smell was nauseating. He had anger issues that he was reluctant to admit. He once hit a computer screen with his fist in front of me due to Wi-Fi issues and slightly slapped my face after I accidentally startled his cat, causing it to run into something face first. We were friends before we started dating, and I ignored some red flags during that time because my attraction to him clouded my judgment. Story 75. Lots of little things pile up to become big things. Constantly checking my phone turned into a barrier that prevented me from seeing my friends. This escalated to outright restrictions and curfews. Someone was even sent to monitor my actions to ensure I complied. It's honestly scary. I still struggle to handle a car driving behind me for too long. Story 76. Mismatched sex drives. He had such a high sex drive that all he wanted to do was have sex. We would have sex, rest for 20 minutes, then he would be ready to go again, and that's how it was all day long. His constant desire for sex made me not want to have it, so I ended the relationship. Story 77. It wasn't a relationship, but more than friendship. They found an actual partner and ended our more than friendship, and it has affected me ever since. Story 78. He didn't do what he said he would. He mentioned he would explore a new career so we could live together, but he never did. It made me feel unimportant. Story 79. He stopped putting in any effort and began to manipulate me, picking random fights out of thin air. I had to beg him to go on dates and to step away from his computer. I did all the chores and grocery shopping. I felt like a mother to a teenager, and it was not great. Story 80. He left me because he found someone who lived closer to him. I was sad, but I understood the need to be with someone nearby. However, he later treated me poorly as he wanted to stay friends, keeping me as a backup option if his new relationship didn't work out. Story 81. I ended it because he did not have a good work ethic. We were not compatible in that way, unfortunately. Story 82. Neglect. In the second year of marriage and the first year living together, he was deployed during our first year. He returned, and I thought we would pick up where we left off, being intimate and enjoying each other's company. Instead, he neglected me emotionally and physically. When I asked why he wasn't doing the things he had done before being deployed, he told me, "I was doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing." Felt like a bait and switch. I understand that things can lose their initial spark over time, but we were basically newlyweds. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life as a 37-year-old woman in a sexless, emotionally distant marriage. I am relieved to be divorced 3 months now. Story 83. He was difficult to deal with and did not show any affection towards me. His parents were unkind. The only family members I liked were his mother's fiancé and his sister's husband. Story 84. Why would you ask this right now? I am already crying. He broke up with me, stating that it wasn't the right time and that we had different goals. However, I found out the next day it was actually because of my hypersexuality. He was, and still is, the only man in the world that I love to be in the company of without being intimate. My chest aches when he is not around. Story 85. I was emotionally unstable and attempted to take my own life. My ex-partner called the authorities, and I spent a week in a mental health facility. I said things I shouldn't have when I was released and never apologized. He was incredibly passive with me afterward, which reinforced my feelings that he never cared, and our relationship fell apart. Story 86. He said, "It's me or the horses," and I chose the horses. Sorry, Chad. Our 3 months together do not and never will outweigh the 2, 23, and 30 years, respectively, I have had with these animals. Also, you were not great in bed. Story 87. I ended it. I felt more like his mom than his girlfriend. He was becoming the most annoying person I knew. He also wasn't funny, which was disappointing. I got bored. Goodbye. Story 88. I realized that I am not someone who needs anyone anymore. Self-love and self-contentment are more than enough for me. Story 89. Incompatible sexual desires. I wasn't interested in intimacy with him, while he desired it frequently. We couldn't reach a compromise. Story 90. I don't know, man. It was the whole situation of getting someone pregnant and him physically assaulting me throughout the entire relationship. I'm okay. I just laugh because it feels better to handle it this way. Story 91. Constant arguments started by my ex over the most mundane things. I'm not kidding. One time she threatened to leave me because I got her the wrong brand of chocolate milk at the donut shop. Eventually, I caught her texting another man she met online, and she admitted to cheating on me with multiple people since the beginning of our relationship. Yet the whole time, she accused me of being a cheater because I like to watch adult content, which is a normal and healthy amount. I never chose adult content over intimacy or let it affect my sex life in any way. She accused me of having poor communication skills and being emotional. It was all projection. She was insecure in our relationship from the beginning, cheated, and then proceeded to project that guilt onto me for 3.5 years. What a nightmare. Story 92. He and his ex-wife were still in love. She kept interfering in our relationship, and he allowed it. I ended things, and he returned to her. Story 93. He distantly ended our relationship while I was on a business trip in the United States. I informed him that I would not accept the offer to proceed with the H-1B visa and relocation. Apparently, I held no value to him if I was not willing to take him to America. Story 94. She told me she couldn't consistently feel romantic feelings for me. I was sure of my love, but she wasn't as certain. 6 months have gone by. Story 95. She was 18 years my senior, and we were in different stages of our lives. I wanted to get married, but she didn't, as she had previously been married to an abusive husband. I am happily married now to someone my age, but we are still friends. Story 96. She felt like she couldn't prevent herself from becoming too attached and keeping it as casual as we discussed earlier. She eventually wants to get married and have her own children. I do not wish to remarry or have more children, so I made it clear from the beginning that if she wanted to date me, we could date, but that would be as far as things would go. Story 97. She was being punished for her past partner's crimes. She admitted to me that she hadn't fully moved on from her last abusive relationship and ended it immediately. Story 98. She got the job she was looking for and discarded me afterwards. The last day we spoke was the day she got the job. Story 99. Substance and verbal abuse. I finally realized she was never going to work on herself and try to change. Story 100. Things had been bad for a long time, but when she started drinking, that was the push I needed to leave. I can tolerate a lot, but I am not going to spend my life with an alcoholic. Story 101. Emotionally immature. Had a tantrum because I said the experience was unsatisfactory and screamed at me in a national park. That was it. Story 102. I brought a lot of jealousy into the relationship from previously being cheated on, and I took it out on her. She was guilty until proven innocent in my eyes. Fast forward a few years and we're married. Things are getting better. I'm working on myself, overcoming my jealousy issues. Then, she decided to have an affair with a coworker. We moved across the country to escape our issues and start over. But she began talking to coworkers on a messaging app, hiding their conversations, denying she was talking to certain people, getting drunk, and talking about how much of a crush she has on someone at work. I just left. I packed my things and drove back home across the country. I spent years working on my jealousy issues to stop taking it out on a partner I loved and cared about, only for her to lean hard into cheating. Story 103. Emotional abuse and infidelity on his part. I haven't broken up yet, as I am sadly making an escape plan because he is not mentally well. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.